A very elaborate one, and one that underscores what is no doubt a very challenging issue, the quality of water in Lake Victoria. Very shortly, we'll be speaking to the corporate communications manager at the National Environment Management Authority on what is being done to quickly address some of the concerns and fears within the public, especially with regard to quality. But if the words of the experts are anything to go by, you can deduct that the water that you are drinking is treated and everything is done to ensure that it's of a standard of quality. However, the water that remains within the lake, and for any other person that could be using it without it going through the processes that agencies, including the National Water and Sewage Corporation, are undertaking, remains to be a real big problem. The blooms are primarily caused by excessive nutrient loading, agricultural runoff, sewage, as well as industrial waste. And some of these have not only turned into large portions of the lake surface into a disturbing green, but also pose severe environmental and public health risks. Madam Naomi Karekaho is the Corporate Communications Manager at the National Environment Management Authority. Many thanks for joining us this morning.
Okay.
You come to MorningAtNTV on the backdrop of a little bit of anxiety that has been caused, especially following the nation media groups carrying of this particular story. How does this augur, but most importantly, what is the conversation at NEMA?
Well, the presence of algal blooms on Lake Victoria or other water bodies is not something new. It is something that we have seen in the past.
Okay.
And it's something I'd like to say happens in Uganda pretty seasonally. You will observe that you have a presence of algal blooms during the rainy seasons. And for that, what accounts for that mainly is that Lake Victoria is 80% rainwater fed. Most of Lake Victoria waters, 80% of Lake Victoria waters come from rainfall. So as long as there's a higher volume of rainfall, you are going to see impact on the lake. And that impact will come in form of increased water levels, it will come in form of algal bloom, it will come in, in different forms and shapes, and this is one of them.
Okay. That introduces context to the whole aspect of this being coming to the fore when the rains come forth. There is a tendency within Kampala for a lot of sewage to be released during the rainy season. And I don't know whether this could also be impacting on the quality, as well as because industrial waste is seen to be a cause. Could industries be offloading a lot of waste during the rainy season or when the rain is pouring?
Well, I wish not to speculate, but there are reasons that have been established to cause pollution of water. Industrial release of waste into the lake is one cause. A lot of activity. It could be hotels, it could be industries, it could be factories, it could be anything. But releasing their untreated waste is part of the causes. Wash off from a lot of rainfall, you realize that when it pours, the flooding happens so quickly. Water runs off very quickly to the lower levels, to the storm absorption areas. Before probably I go there, Kampala is said to be a city built on 7 hills. So those hills have low-lying areas or valleys. Also happens to lie in the Lake Victoria basin catchment. So there's a lot of rainy and wet activity in Kampala, Wakiso, and the neighboring districts. So given that it's an urban area, a lot of activity, population, agriculture, urbanization, industrialization, there's a lot of activity. So it has reduced the grass cover, it has reduced the tree cover. We are paving everything, we are building a lot, we are paving everything. A little shower washes everything down the valley. And from the media, I have seen the media has focused a lot on the drainage issue, which is correct. So the drainage and the discussion that I have had on media is that now all the channels are going to be opened, and there was discussion to open all the channels directly into Lake Victoria. That does not allow for ample time for this water that is coming from the catchment to be processed naturally by wetlands or artificially by other processes, for example, lagoons, or holding it, or some sort of processing before it gets into the lake. So we are getting a lot of water quickly rushing into the lake, and of course causing what is of concern right now, the algae bloom. Okay,
so the natural purification process that goes on in the catchment areas, well, it could be endangered, but you spoke about the artificial, including lagoons. Do we have those around?
Yeah, we've been having those. We had those. National Water had 3 lagoons in Tinda servicing.
What happened?
That is not something I'm going to go into. Okay. It's not a NEMA matter, but they are artificial processes of managing waste, but that I leave to another agency.
Okay, all right. Now, in light of all this, NEMA must be working around the clock on ensuring, first and foremost, that we do not leave this to the natural explanations that, well, this is going to happen the way it does as long as the rain's coming. We need the lake at any one point in time, the fresh water clean, and the algae blooms totally absent. What is the plan?
I mean, at this point, and the fact that I come from NEMA, I can't say you will eliminate the natural processes altogether.
No doubt.
This is what we have anyway in plenty. Natural processes, partly meaning maintaining wetlands in a sound form, because they are the natural purifiers of waters before it is released into the lake. They are the sponges that absorb, that receive water, absorb it, process it, and then release clean water into Lake Victoria. So at this point in time, we can't run away from the natural purifications, because we can't fully afford artificial processes. They're expensive. You could use technology, you could trap the water, you could use lagoons, you could use many processes.
There's a whole lot of capital needed too.
There's a whole lot of capital needed, and which we don't have readily. In those circumstances, we could rely, and we still have a good amount of water, a good amount of wetland that we could use to purify this water if we looked after it, and if we looked after the catchment well.
Well, those are low-lying fruits for us as a country, but often NEMA has come under the spotlight for failing to effectively ensure that the catchment areas are not encroached on. Even when they are encroached on, the actions taken to restore them is usually gradual, and maybe that is where we should concentrate.
See, the catchment is Lake Victoria is in 3 countries, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. And that's a whole huge catchment to look at. On the Ugandan side, Kenya side is sandy, and I think Tanzania side is also sandy, but Ugandan side is wetlands, is wet.
Right.
Managing the catchment is not a one organization responsibility. It is a huge responsibility. Managing the catchment means managing waste. It means looking after trees. It means being responsible. It means regulating industries. It means regulating populations. It means regulating activities. That's not a one-person responsibility. It's an interagency responsibility. It's an individual responsibility. I shared with one of your colleagues a video yesterday. During the rain, somebody brought a tuk-tuk tuk-tuk full of waste and released it into the drainage as it was raining. They kept getting sacks and putting it into the drainage. There's a picture last year that circulated, somebody pouring their waste directly into the drainage channel so that it ran into the lake. So really, individual behavior. We need to do better, first as individuals. Then as organizations, we need to put in place mechanisms of reducing, of managing waste before we release it into the environment. At home, we can collect it, we can recycle it, we can repurpose it, we can reuse it, we can recycle it. There's so many ways we can use waste. Waste is a resource. So we shouldn't leave all of it to return to the environment and leave it to nature to look after it. So to say that NEMA should do something, we have talked about it.
Because you are the custodian and you have the mandate, the resources, and most importantly, the law is on your side. Let
me introduce you to other organizations that look after the catchment. There's the institutional framework. We have Ministry of Water and Environment.
Okay.
Under Ministry of Water and Environment, we have National Forest Authority. Their mandate is to plant trees and green as to the extent possible the country. You have the Meteorological Department to warn you rains are coming, and they have done their job. You have the Directorate of Water Resources Management. What is the quality of water? How much water is there? How much is needed for commercial purposes, for domestic purposes, for all sorts of purposes? And then you have NEMA, which is the regulator of the environment, of what does the law say? What should it say?
More like the NEMA holds the umbrella for the rest when it comes to the environment.
When it comes to the law, yes. But in terms of implementation, in terms of doing the actual work, it's not just NEMA. NEMA is where we in the last 3 years we increased to 400 people. Would you expect that 400?
So what you're suggesting is that somebody is not holding the button well enough after NEMA?
What I'm suggesting is let's spread the risk.
Okay.
Let's consider spreading the risk. Let's consider looking at what other departments are doing or what they are not doing. What is NEMA doing? What is it not doing? How much resourcing is availed to NEMA? How much of it is it using? How much is it not using? So really look at a comprehensive picture, not just, like the let's target and see who is not, let's target and see whether we'll catch NEMA in this. You will catch a bit.
No, actually, no one is targeting to catch NEMA, but these are aspects of mandate.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying look at it broadly.
Broadly.
There's a Lake Victoria Basin Initiative. This is a huge organization, regional organization. Maybe you need to have a discussion with them. You have LAVEM. You have organizations dedicated to managing Lake Victoria. Talk to them.
We talk to all these sector players and stakeholders when we have to talk to them or when we are able to interface with them. But what I want to understand right now is that within the mandate that NEMA has, there must be aspects that if you, for example, were emboldened in doing that, it could significantly shift the balance to your side to be able to do the job. I do not know whether it's regulation, I don't know whether it's resources, I don't know whether it's a lack of cooperation from other agencies.
I will give it to you. It is managing the catchment better.
Managing the catchment better.
The whole catchment. The whole catchment of Lake Victoria. That includes looking after wetlands, that involves ensuring, regulating industries strictly to ensure that their waste, they contain it. There's a beer factory in Jinja. They abstract water from River Nile. They use it to manufacture beer. But the water that they draw from the river and the water that they return into the river, the water they return is cleaner than the water that they draw.
That is a beer manufacturer.
That's a beer manufacturer, and I think that's a good example. If all the factories that are closer to Lake Victoria did that, then we would achieve a percentage of reduction in pollution of Lake Victoria. But then again, you know that the national policy for Uganda is pro-investment. So if NEMA went out and cracked the whip and closed all the factories
that are returning dirty water into the lakes and the
that are
rivers,
not doing the utmost that they should, that are trying, that are fledgling, then you would have a problem with development. Not all of them have the same amount of capital. We call it compliance assistance. Some of them are not able to achieve the highest standard of effluent management. But you know, you assist them through compliance year by year, and they get better. And we have seen these examples. So it's really a balancing act. What do you do? What do you start with? Do you close all the factories? Do you close all the hotels? Do you evict everybody out of wetlands? Where do you put them? Things like that.
Okay, Madam Karikaho, you've just expressed a sentiment that of course should be heard, especially by the top policymakers, in ensuring that the work of NEMA is made better. The investment push by the country is one that is endangering the environment, and there needs to be effort to rein in on investors that are responsible for the industries that release effluent into the lakes and the rivers that NEMA cannot go for because they are at the front of the industrialization and investment push. Let's go for a break. When we return, Madam Karikaho will be speaking to us about budgetary allocations and maybe how NEMA can be emboldened in able to do the work that it has to do on its own. Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us. In our Kickstarter discussion, we are looking at how addressing Lake Victoria's green algae blooms and the threat of killer toxins that are reportedly, of course, inundating the waters and posing a huge threat to the environment. The National Environment Management Authority is mandated to ensure that some of these aspects are taken care of, but talk of interagency cooperation and the fact that somebody somewhere could be dropping the ball is one that we cannot escape. As we return to the conversation with me, Madam Naomi Karikaho, the Corporate Communications Manager at NEMA, I'd love to ask her the question on how, for example, NEMA does work alongside other agencies, including Kampala Capital City Authority. Over the last 1 year, the waste management problem within the city was one that we were grappling with. However, there was what appeared to be a dip into efforts by KCCA to ensure that there is effective management of the same, on account, many will say, of the increasing pressures that urbanization brings. I don't know whether there has been conversations between NEMA and KCCA to create an appropriate strategy in tackling this particular problem.
You see, different government agencies have different mandates. Urban authorities, according to the law, are the primary lead agencies responsible for waste management. When we talk about waste management, we mean a whole lot of it. Domestic waste, how domestic waste is handled, how medical waste is handled, e-waste, and all those wastes. NEMA provides the law. According to the law, e-waste is supposed, it could be recycled, could be incinerated, medical waste, but organic waste, which is the most in Uganda. We have a lot of food in Kampala and we generate a lot of organic waste. You will not go a distance without seeing organic waste. How is that handled? And from at the beginning of this conversation, you said that nutrient load is what is polluting Lake Victoria. And that nutrient load is coming from the food waste. The food waste, washing mainly into the lake. So the agencies responsible for waste could probably put in place mechanisms that minimize how much waste and stays in the environment. What do we need to do? Should we sort it? Where should we recycle it? What should it be turned into? So that people know, everybody along the chain, the value chain, knows what they can do with their waste. I don't know how that is going. I mean, you can speak to the urban authorities and they'll let you know what their challenges are, but that's a big challenge.
Interesting there. I'll be requiring to know whether there are any priorities that must be handled ahead of the financial year. But allow me ask on benchmarking. How you talked about the fact that Tanzania and Kenya could be grappling with own realities with regard to the formations of the basin environment, that is Victoria Basin. Have we done benchmarking and have, for example, case studies, if copied and implemented here, we could effectively manage these challenges?
I know that these countries also have their own issues when it comes to utilization of Lake Victoria. But remember, for them, it's just those neighboring communities. Their capitals are not right on the lake. It's Kampala that is by the lake.
That's right.
Their capitals are far, and for them, they have a benefit of the oceans. They have access to Indian Ocean. So
it's a larger water body.
A larger water body, so they are the needs for fish, for tourism, for activities, they are there. They are not necessarily by Lake Victoria. So the pressures on Lake Victoria on the Ugandan side are different from the pressures of Kenya and Tanzania. But overall, as long as populations increase, as long as we demand of our water bodies as much as we do, we will have visible challenges.
Okay. Now, when this story ran, most of the attention was directed towards the impact on humans, the people within Uganda. We forgot that the lake itself has so much life which could be impacted heavily, and even the quantity as well as the quality of what we get from the lake could also be, find itself dipping a little. The conversation on fish, quantities and quality, I know it's not exclusively a NEMA issue, but the environment within and on the lake is one that you interest yourself in. What is that like?
Lake Victoria is a freshwater body. It has a life of its own. And it hosts so much biodiversity, endemic species of fish. In the surrounding wetlands, there are animals, so there's hunting that goes on. So many activities. And you'll also note that fish breeds in the shallow waters, in the shallow warm waters. So fish breeds nearer
the shores,
what you see, where the algal bloom is. Now, when the water is contaminated to that extent, the breeding is affected. And if there should be eggs that survive and become fish, how much toxins have they ingested? And how much toxins are going to come to you? Because whatever is in the water will be in your body. So there's a health issue there.
Is that a conversation that you are engaged in?
Without a doubt. I can tell you for sure that the Directorate of Water Resources Management does regular sampling of waters and tests them in the laboratory to determine what's going on where, to minimize it. And that's why the lake is not green throughout the year. Sometimes it comes in a certain season and it's a crisis situation like it is now, but then after a short period of time, that stops. Somebody's working. We are not delivering up to 100% capacity, but somebody's working and we are working.
All right. What's the state of the water high thing? Have we completely eliminated that one?
Well, that is something that I would say Directorate of Water Resources Management speaks about. I can't give you the stats now, but I think they can be made available upon request to Directorate of Water Resources Management.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll make the question about the priorities ahead of the next financial year very general. If we go into specifics, that will be a conversation that will take us another hour or so. But in light of the budget framework, I don't know whether there is anything specific that, if attended to or resources availed, NEMA would significantly do its job as we expect.
Without a doubt. Of
Which
course,
one is that?
If we had more resources, we'd be able to accomplish more. But we have one cake where all of us want a piece of, so we all get just a little portion that we can at a given time, and that enables us to do what we can in the circumstances. If we had resources, we would do more research, we would do more studies, we would do more enforcement, we would do more of restoration of the catchment, we would do more cleanups, we would invest in technology. This is a different conversation that we can have another day, but the intermediary between natural resources and development is technology. You must develop, but you also must sustain resources. In between, the only sustainable path is technology. So to invest in technology, real-time technology that will alert you that there's a problem, technology that will clean up, technology that will clean the water, will filter it, will, that to have a seamless system, but all that requires a lot of money. That money does not necessarily really come to the natural resources sector, to the environment. It is shared across the board according to the priorities of the country.
Okay. Now, as corporate communications manager, I know sensitization campaigns are pretty much one of your prongs in pushing for awareness, especially on environmental protection. I don't know whether communities are engaged enough. Which initiatives are you running that should ensure that we deal with this particular issue by knowledge sharing in order for communities that live around the shores to understand how to go about this particular challenge?
The communities are sensitized to the extent that is affordable, and also sensitized at different levels. We have a department dedicated to education, schools. So we start with schools, with the young minds, empower them with knowledge, the best practices. We have NGOs and CBOs that are responsible for teaching communities. NEMA goes out every single day, but there is no amount of education that somebody arrives at and says, yeah, I don't need more. I'm fully educated. Now I know. It's an ongoing process. It's an endless process. We don't stop to learn. But most importantly is that communities, the things that we did as communities to protect natural resources, we have gone away from, because we are seeking to be modern and we are seeking to fully rely on the center to do those things for us. People had totems, not to step in water, not to kill animals, not to cut certain trees.
Wow.
All that has been eroded. The cultural values associated with protecting the environment have eroded. So now we are all doing as we wish and expecting that the central government, that NEMA, will attend to our misbehavior, which is a very difficult thing to deal with at the end of the day.
Okay. Madam Naomi Karikaho, Corporate Communications Manager at the National Environment Management Authority, many thanks for the perspective, but most importantly, updating us on what is being done to arrest some of the developments as reported by Nation Media Group over the last 1 week or so. Do stay with us if you can. Our conversations do continue. I have my colleague Rashu Adidi, who will be coming to us from Koboko district, where 400 new refugees have reportedly entered the district on account of fear and the speculation of a return to war in South Sudan. We also have Stephen Ibido on ground, who will be bringing us up to speed with compensation efforts to the victims of the Kitezi disaster. That will be coming up in the next 30 minutes of Morning at NTV. Do stay with us.